I get fired up every time I watch it. I saw the finished product yesterday for the first time, and I watch it like 5 times in a row because it's crazy to me that we're already in part 2 of this series. We've been looking forward to it for so long now, and some of you may be back from part 1 last week. Maybe you were here for the first time ever with us at House of Torment, and if that's you, I'm so glad you're here because that's why we do that. It's not about one Sunday. We want you to know you have a place long-term where you belong and you can connect here. But we kicked it off last week, and we said the big idea is that For Austin is a movement. It's a movement of people who want the city to know that we are for them, we are for our community, we are for our schools. And we said the reality is when it comes to a place like this, when it comes to the church, that for too long, the church has been known for what it's against. And we want to be known for what we are for. We said that's kind of what the whole big idea is behind this. And specifically, we said we're for a lot of things, but the big 3 that we introduced last week is we said we are for growth, belonging, and purpose. All of us want to grow somewhere. All of us want to be a better version of ourselves, not like a guilty way. We just desire that, and we want to help you in that direction. We want you to know that you have a place here where you belong, where you can connect and maybe form relationships that will last a lifetime, and we're for you finding your purpose and your meaning to walk across that stage whenever it is that you graduate and know you live differently than most in high school. You live for something bigger than you. And last week, and you might have just seen it in the video there, we asked the question of what's next? What's next? Like, what's the first step in being for Austin? And specifically, we talked about the environments we have here at North Point. We talked about this building, this place, which is an incredible tool to love and lead people. But we said we've been capped in this space, and we started talking about our next home. We started talking about the fact that we want to actually have land that is ours, not this office complex like this, as great as it's been, but have land that is ours, that we get to build our own home so that we can love and lead people like we never have before, to create environments and spaces where people can grow and belong and discover purpose and meaning. And so the question that we asked and that I want to continue to answer throughout this series is how can we together be a part of For Austin? If you're new here last week or today, I just want to let you know that you kind of just get to sit back and enjoy in this series. You kind of just get to see our heart behind what we do and why we do what we do. I don't want you to feel obligated that you have to take any of the steps that we talk about in this series. This is really more for people who have been here for a while, or maybe who have been impacted by somebody or by some environment at North Point. Maybe it's Inside Out, maybe it's your small group, maybe it's a small group leader, maybe it's Camp 75 in the summer, or My Life, our camp that we do in January, those kinds of things. If that's you, and you're like, God has used these people or this place to impact my life, I want to talk about how it is that you can be more involved, because today we're going to talk about something in Inside Out that we've never talked about in Inside Out before, which is actually crazy for me to think about that, and you'll see what it is in just a minute. But what I want to talk about is the greatest way that we can get our hearts invested in For Austin. I want to talk about the greatest thing to get your heart invested in For Austin. And the reason I use the word heart, or we're going to talk about the idea of our heart, is really, really important, because I don't want to just give you a list of things that you kind of check off like it's a homework assignment, okay? If we're going to make an impact, a real impact in a city that has 2 million people, that's not going to happen overnight. That's a long-term dream and vision. And as much as I love old people, I have nothing against old people, it's going to be you guys that are going to make this happen. It's going to take some incredible creativity, some incredible innovation, some ideas that have not been thought up yet. It's going to take some extraordinary leadership, and you starting all kinds of organizations and nonprofits and leading here at North Point to love our city in a way that it's never been loved before. And if that's going to happen, our hearts really have to be in this thing. Because what we believe is that we have a heavenly Father whose heart is for everybody in Austin. And so we want our hearts to be aligned with His. It's going to take some incredible passion, some incredible determination, and some amazing ideas to really make these things come to fruition. And so I want to talk about this today. And specifically to do that, I want to tell kind of like a side story about somebody who has been incredibly important in my life. I want to talk about, North Point impacting your life. The way that Inside Out made a huge difference in my life was really through my small group leader, and his name is Jeff. And I want to talk for a quick second about Jeff because he was so instrumental in my time here. You see, Jeff, I've never wondered if Jeff is for me. And it's really because Jeff has been there at almost every single important moment in my life since I've met him. Not only has he sat down with me hundreds of times in a small group setting, but he sat down with me hundreds of times outside of a small group as well over the course of almost 10 years now. And it is amazing how many coffees, how many breakfasts, how many lunch and dinners that I've had with Jeff. The first time I sat down with him was at a Chick-fil-A, and I sat down with him really before I was even a Christian. And I sat down with him, and I had this attitude like I was too cool for all this, and I was too smart for all this, and all these kinds of things. And that didn't bother him at all. He was like, that's fine. Like, I just want to know your story, and I'm just interested in who you are. And he created a space for me to belong before I believed. Then he sat down with me in the midst of one of my hardest seasons of high school, and he talked to me and walked through with me when my parents' divorce happened, and my whole world was rocked, and I didn't know what to do. And he talked with me a lot through that season, and we had a lot of coffees and a lot of breakfasts, and he was incredibly helpful in that time. Then he sat through another important kind of time or idea in my life. We sat down every single time I would have a question or a doubt. He would talk through all kinds of advice, college advice when it comes to like what's next and what's his future state. He actually went to UT as well, which is where I wanted to go, and talked through what major and all of these different kinds of things. Anytime I had a doubt or a question about faith, he never acted like I was weird for not knowing things. And so if he didn't already know my question, then he would go look it up and research it, and we would have another coffee and meet again, and he would talk through all of these incredible things. The next one I put on the list is this, because Jeff went through one of the hardest things that you can go through in this life. My senior year, his son passed away, and our whole small group was confused. Our whole small group was angry. Our whole small group was hurting. And Jeff, you would have expected him to just say, I can't be a part of this right now. I can't serve, I can't engage. And he actually did the opposite of that. And he got our whole small group together multiple times and talked all about what he was learning and what he was experiencing and how he felt like God was still there throughout the entire process. I mean, it was amazing to see his faith through those kinds of moments. Jeff was there as I got closer to graduation, and I had the opportunity to speak at graduation, and he worked through my script and what I was going to say, and then he sat with my family. And then when I was actually in college, I got to interview him, and I got to sit down with him because I needed a business interview for one of my business classes, and I got to hear all about his career, and we met at Whataburger, and he talked through that. And then as I got a little bit further on through college, I started to get to a point where I wondered, I wonder if this is the next step. And so the next event that I put on there, or is our slide frozen? I skipped one. My 21st birthday was an important one. My 21st birthday, Jeff was the first person outside of my immediate family to buy me a beer, which I'm like, I just think that should be small group leader goals for life. So I had one with my dad, and then I went and I hung out with Jeff. Yeah, Steve, challenge accepted. So That was Jeff. He's like, I always wanted to do that. And he sat down, and it was yet another meal and yet another moment. And then I started to think about, I was dating Emily throughout college, and I was like, is the timing right to get married, and what would that look like? And he met through all of those kinds of things. And in fact, this week, Jeremy Edelin and I met with Jeff again because we meet with him every other week, and he has been on the other side of us so many times. And I have never once questioned if Jeff is for me. And the reason that I've never questioned if he's for me is because of all the ways that he showed up. And he showed up in all kinds of ways. I mean, just physically being there in hard moments. He's encouraged me. He's passed on incredible wisdom and incredible advice. He's laughed through fun times with me and celebrated good moments. But Jeff did something else over the course of these 8 or 9 years that I've known him that I don't want to just skip over because it's incredibly important. Because another way that Jeff chose to show that he was for me is he chose to invest financially in my life. If you just add up a conservative guess of 10 years of coffees and meals with our whole small group, it is thousands of dollars at this point. And I've never paid for one of those meals. One time I tried, and I said, Jeff, you bought so many, I'm going to do it. And it was while I was in college, and I showed up, and there was a whole small group, and I was like, I'm paying today. And I got up to the cash register, and I had every intention to. And I did like that awkward like padding moment and realized I had left my wallet on campus. It was a genuine mistake. And he was like, dude, like just step aside. Let me show you how it's done. And he was like, you're not going to do that anymore. But he literally has paid for every single one. So that alone, to be there in all those moments, was a commitment. But then I got to go to Juja, Kenya 3 times with Mosaic, which is our global engagement ministry here. And he invested in every single one of those trips, which is not cheap to get over there. It was scary to try to fundraise for that. And he invested in every single one. And then when it came time to graduate, and Jeremy Edelin and I both, we were trying to figure out, we graduated at the same time, and we're like, can we actually invest our full time and energy here at North Point? He gave to that campaign so that we could actually get hired and work here full time at North Point. He has invested financially in my life. And that sacrifice is one of the many reasons why I have never wondered if Jeff is for me. What I want to talk about with our time today, one of the many ways, and we're going to talk about a lot of ways in this series, but one of the many ways that we can be a part of For Austin is to invest in For Austin. And I want to talk about what that looks like, because that's when I said we've never talked about this in Inside Out. We never have before. So if you are new here or new last week and you're wondering, is this something we talk about a lot? We never have before, which is crazy to me because it's such an important and pivotal conversation. And I want to talk about what does it look like and why would we do that? But I know if we're going to talk about money, I know if we're going to talk about investing, especially in this kind of an environment, I know that can bring up some tensions. I know you might have some pushbacks. There could be some weirdness or awkwardness. And so I was wondering, what are just like some common, playing field kind of things that we could talk about just to get the conversation going, just to get our minds in this area, this avenue a little bit. And so I was Googling and researching this week, and I learned all kinds of really random stats about money, and I don't think it'll ever help my life in any kind of way, but some fascinating stuff. I found who made the most money in terms of celebrities in our culture last year. This is the top 10 list in terms of who has the most to do something with. LeBron was on this list, but he's not the top athlete, actually. There's some, ahead of him. Coldplay I thought was interesting because I'm like, that's not one person, right? That's more like the group, but I wasn't totally sure how to think about that. What I love is that J.K. Rowling dominates so many people because the 7th Harry Potter book was written 10 years ago, and she's still making bank. And she was the first person to ever fall off the billionaire list because of generosity. Every time she hits $1 billion in net worth, she gives it away because she never wants to be worth $1 billion. So she's one of the most extraordinarily generous individuals in the world. Then you got the Queen on there, number 2. I would never have guessed that Diddy was number 1. I just didn't know that. Maybe y'all knew that, but he's far and away the number 1 on the list. Y'all know who the richest person in the world in terms of who just has the most money? Jeff Bezos. Yeah, so Jeff Bezos is the CEO of Amazon. He's passed up Bill Gates in the last couple of years, and it's actually by a lot, 60 billion more, which is not a small amount. So he is far and away the richest person in the world in terms of who has the most money to invest. And then I found out random things that'll just this will not help your life in any way, but I came across one guy who's really panicked. He thinks the U.S. is going to go run out of money and we're going to be bankrupt because of the penny, because it costs more than a penny to make a penny. And so we actually lose money every single time a penny is made, which there's a lot made every single day. So that's kind of his theory, which is fairly random. Then I found out, how many of you guys ever go to Starbucks and you order ahead of time on the app? Have any of you guys ever done that before? So you know how on the app, if you've ever done that, you actually have to preload your account, right? You can't just order the drink. You have to load money on it ahead of time. So Starbucks announced that they have in those accounts, people that have just loaded up a card, over $1 billion, which means they hold more of their customers' money just on hand for customers to use than a lot of banks do, which is ridiculous. Just sitting in the app, over $1 billion uploaded, which is nuts. This next one, we're almost at the end of these, but was one of the most shocking statistics I came across. And this is that the average household has 300,000 items, stuff. When you add up pens and pencils and utensils and everything in your house, 300,000 items. And the average American spends 12 days a year looking for things they can't find. That's amazing to me. You think about how often you're looking for your homework, or your backpack, or what clothes you want to wear, your phone, or whatever. I think the most useful part of the Apple Watches for me is just pinging my phone and finding it all over the place. But that's insane. If you live to be 90, you will have spent 3 years of your life looking for your stuff. That is fascinating to me. That just shows you how much stuff we really do have. That's extraordinary. And if you're like, hey, why would we have this conversation in like our high school environment? We just don't have very much money to make a difference or all that kind of stuff. Just think about this. If you have $10 in your pocket or at home or in your backpack or whatever, you are wealthier than 20% of Americans if you don't have any debt yet. Like if you haven't yet taken out any kind of car loan or any kind of credit card or any of that kind of stuff, you're wealthier than 20% of Americans because about 60 million people are in more debt than the amount of money they actually have. So you guys may be actually a lot richer than you think or than you would actually perceive yourself. Here's the last one that I want to share because I think it's important to the conversation. 70% of college students stress about money, and that is going up rapidly. Which for me, when I read this, I'm like, man, it's crazy that we haven't had more conversations in Inside Out about this because the next stage for all of you will be college. And in that stage, you go to school to figure out what is it you want to do with your career to make money. And now you have to make decisions about handling money and student loans and how you spend it and how you budget it and all these different kinds of things. And that's next. For some of you, that's really, really close. For all of us, that's within the next 3 or 4 years. And it's a stress for the average college student. So if that's real, if that's a reality, I just want to see, is there like a healthy way, starting at a young age, which just puts you ahead of the majority of the U.S. population, starting at a young age that we can have a healthy view of our money? If it's so linked to our freedom and our security and our control and the fun we can have and all these kinds of things, if it's so linked to that, if it's linked to the health of our relationships, did you know that the number one reason that couples get divorced is because of money-related problems? I mean, this is a big deal. It impacts every area of our life. Is there a way, is there something helpful that God has to say about money that is helpful in how we view money and our resources? It's actually the number one most frequent practical topic that Jesus talks about in the New Testament. He talks about our money all the time because he knows what a big deal it is to us and how much time we're going to someday end up thinking about it and chasing it and all of these kinds of things. In fact, one day he's talking to a really big crowd, and he says this about our stuff. He says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. He says, basically, why try to spend your life accumulating stuff that eventually you might lose or leave behind? I just got another new iPhone, and I realized, you know what, this is like the 5th or 6th phone I've had in my life now, and I will never think about the previous 5 like ever again. My first car I was so excited about, and I was like looking up all these cars and test driving them with my dad. Then I totaled it. It's in a junkyard somewhere. It's never going to impact my life again. We will actually run out of time before we run out of money. Yet we spend a lot of our life consumed with and thinking about acquiring more and more stuff. And Jesus is just like, hey, why would you do that? And then he says an incredibly simple and incredibly profound statement. Maybe you've heard it before, but he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He says, where you put your money, where you spend your money, that shows what really is most important to your heart. This is why I said up front that today what we're talking about has an incredible impact on our hearts. For example, if you want to know what's important to my heart, you could just look at my bank account. You could look at my credit card, and that would be a better indication of what is important to me than anything I say to you or say up from here. You would know that I have my heart is unhealthy and into Nike at like an unhealthy degree. That I'm like trying to get too many shoes and too many running shoes, and I've asked too many of you which ones I should get because I'm insecure and all these kinds of things, and you see it's like unhealthy. Apple the same way. It's like I'm trying to always get the new stuff even though this year's phone is exactly the same as last year's phone and it doesn't do anything different. It's like I want it, and you can see my heart is unhealthy in there. You can actually see, if I gave you guys my credit card statement, you'd be able to look on there and see my drug addiction because you would be able to see how frequently I consume caffeine. And I have this drug of caffeine so many times every single day. And you'd be able to see that in my statement. You'd be able to see that my favorite restaurant, my favorite date night with Emily is Jack Allen's, and you'd be able to see that on there. And you would be able to see that North Point is very important to me as well. And I don't say that from like, oh, wow, look at me statement. I just would wonder if we've never really thought about that I would never ask you guys to consider something that myself or that our leaders wouldn't do first. All of our staff here, everybody who works here, gives sacrificially to North Point, not out of like a, oh, you have to do that, or somebody's checking on you, or well, any of those kinds of things, but because we realize the potential for life change, and we want our heart to stay connected to what we're doing. Because the bottom line is that where you invest, your heart will follow. Personally, for me, one of the things that I love about what I get to do is that I have a front row seat to the next generation, and I think I have a bigger belief than most people in y'all's potential and what it might be that you could have accomplished. And so if you would be like, why would we talk about investing in Fort Austin in this environment? I really believe that the innovation, the creativity, the leadership that is in this room, that is in Inside Out, that is in Transit, our middle school environment, is an absolute game changer. And I think you guys may not even realize the difference you could possibly make. For example, we see on average about 250 students each Sunday between Transit, which is our middle school environment on Sunday mornings, and here in Inside Out. If, for example, we were to say that each student were to say over the next year, so not like this week, not each week, but just over the next year, we wanted to give, $100 to Fort Austin. If we were to say that, that is $25,000. That is not insignificant. That is not a small amount, right? That's an incredible impact that we could make. And you could get there probably quicker than you think or realize. I don't know. For those of you that have a job, that's probably less than a paycheck. Maybe it's 2, but I would guess that's about a paycheck if you're paid every 2 weeks and those kinds of things. And maybe it's less than 1 paycheck. If you babysit, I don't know, what is that? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, babysitting. Maybe it depends where in Austin you're babysitting at. I don't know. You get to go over to Lake Travis or something like that. Some babysitting. Maybe if you mow lawns, that's like, 4 lawns, or I don't know what the rate is this day for a good lawn cut by you guys. But it's like you get there probably quicker than you realize. That's like 1 Starbucks drink every other week or so. I mean, to get there would be like $2 or $3 a week would be like the average to say like, man, I want to make an impact and I want to make a difference in Fort Austin. Wouldn't it be cool if we could say, hey, adults, like, we love you, like, we're 4 old people too, like, that's awesome. But when it comes to like our small group rooms, when it comes to having our starting point rooms and those kinds of things decorated, like, hey, we're going to take care of those. Like, thanks, guys, we appreciate it, but we're going to go ahead and furnish all these on our own because we know how important it is that people can connect and grow and find purpose. And I want to create a space where my friends on my team and in my classes can come and connect. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take care of each of these rooms. The lights, the stage, the fun, the environment, guys, we've got that. We're going to cover it. Like, again, thank you, Sunday morning. Thank you, adults. But we're going to cover this because my friends are way too important. And what God has done in my life is way too significant for my friends not to know that God is for them and not against them. So yeah, I want to be a part of this and I want to invest in this because I want to make this possible. See, I think there's a potential that we can make an incredible impact. And I don't think it's as much about the money or as much about the resources as it is about our hearts being a part of this and for people in Austin. Practically, I want to show you what this looks like. And again, you could choose to skip this step. That's totally up to you. This is between you and God and what you want to do and how you want to be a part. If you're new, again, you just get to listen and observe this. But practically what this would look like is at the end of this series, so on November 11th, what we're going to do is we're going to have a day where we would pledge and we would choose to say and kind of state, this is what I want to give to Fort Austin. This is how financially I would want to invest in Fort Austin, and just pick a number on that date. Not that you would give on that date, but you'd say, hey, over the next year, not even quite that long, this is what I want to give. If you've been a part of us on Sunday mornings, our adults are doing a full kind of 2-year thing to be Fort Austin. What we're going to do in Inside Out is we're just going to say, hey, we want to give by the end of this school year. We're not going to go 2 years. We're just going to say by the end of this school year, and specifically, if you're a junior or a senior in the room, if you're an upperclassman, we had you in mind when we thought about this because we really believe that your heart is linked to your stuff. And so when you go on from here, I don't want you to go to school in California and feel tied down to some commitment you made in Austin. I want you to be freed up to be generous wherever it is that you go next, wherever it is that God has you next. And so we're going to make this just about this school year and leaving a legacy and creating environments for people to show up to and be a part of in the future. on a very kind of practical level, kind of the next steps, this is what this might look like for you. I don't know how you could be involved or a part of any of this without the first step being just simply to pray. To say, we have a personal God who hears everything we say, and we just want to bring this to him first. I don't want it to be something like Jordan told you to do or your small group leader told you to do or any of those things, but just, God, like, would you have me be a part of this? Would you have me give to this? Like, is it $0? Is it $5? Is it $500? Like, God, what would you have me do to be a part of this? As you're praying over the next several weeks in this series, another way that I want you very practically to be a part of this series is we're going to have out in the foyer every single day this board, and we're going to have it on the wall outside. And what I want you to do is I want you to just tell us how it is that you are for Austin. As you are praying for and as you're thinking about, and you're thinking about people in your school and you're thinking about your friends that aren't here yet and you're thinking about your family members and all those kinds of things, as your heart in that process becomes more and more for Austin, we want to hear from you, we want to learn from you, and we want to know what are the things that you're passionate about. What people, what groups? Is it your family? Is it your parents? Is it your friends? Is it an organization? Is it a place? Is it a restaurant? Is it a team? What are you for in Austin? Who do you want to know that them to know that God is for them? And it'll slip up over the next couple weeks, so come and sign, and if all the spots have already been filled, then fill in spaces in between, and we just want to hear from you and hear what is that you are for in Austin. Then, on November 11th, in the last part of this series, that will be when we make that commitment. That will be when we make that pledge. It's not going to be a public thing. We're not going to talk about small groups on that day or any of that kind of stuff. It's going to be a private thing on that date that you can fill out. You can say, this is one I want to give, if you want to be a part of, if you want to invest in. And then the last thing that I would ask that you do is use the hashtag for Austin as you're taking pictures around Austin and with people to let us know what you are for in Austin. And one of the really cool things that we're going to do to kind of track our progress or kind of celebrate our progress as we go is this. We're going to take a picture similar to this one, may not be this exact one, the For Austin logo over an Austin skyline or something like that. And we're going to create a mosaic picture. I don't know if you guys know what those are. It's a picture made up of thousands of smaller pictures. And what we're going to do is as we go and as we progress, we're actually going to create a mosaic picture of everybody who has given, who has invested into For Austin, all of our students specifically. This is Transit Inside Out, who have used For Austin. So for example, if we said, hey, we're a couple months from now and 25% of what we committed has come in, this is what that progress will kind of look like. And then, 50% of it is given. This is what that progress will kind of look like. This was only done with like a couple hundred pictures, and we'd have a lot more, which should be really, really cool to think about. When it's done, we'll order this. We'll have a sign like this that has all of those kinds of pictures of us being for Austin and say, hey, these are the people that made For Austin possible. These are the people that made our home possible. These are the people that are for Austin, that are for our community, that are for one another. That's what we're going to be doing in some of the many ways that you can be a part over the next coming weeks. We're going to talk about something completely different next week, but I want to take time to talk about in our small groups today. Our bottom line when it comes to money, when it comes to our finances is this. It's not that. It's not let's get this Fred. I just had to throw it on there. Our bottom line is where you invest, your heart will follow, because this is not about a money thing. This is about our hearts being for Austin. This is what my hope and our desire is for every single one of us. I'd love to end our time and pray and even just start now to invite God into that process, and then we'll head to our groups. Heavenly Father, God, thank you that you are for us, that you've made that so abundantly clear that we don't ever have to worry about that anymore. God, we want everybody in this city to know, have the opportunity to hear that you are for them, that you love them unconditionally. And God, this is a complicated topic. This is a complicated idea. So much of our emotions and our stories are wrapped up into a concept like this. And so, God, I just ask that you would take what we've talked about, that you would simplify it, that you would help us have some incredible conversations about this so that we can love our city in radical ways, so we can show up in our city in ways that it's never seen before. And we just can't wait to see what you do, how you provide, and the stories that you make possible. God, we love you, and we need you desperately. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.